this is Chris Hoy. Thank you for joining me on Create with Chris. Today I am painting a Christmas tree on a tag. Super easy. The techniques are very simple and I think you're going to absolutely love and be fascinated with how quickly it comes together. I created a smaller one for a make and take that I did the end of October. I just thought it would be fun to paint it on a larger surface, so grab your brushes and let's get started. I did seal the surface with a multi-purpose sealer, let it dry and lightly sand it. This just ensures that the paint will adhere well, provides a silky smooth surface, easy on the brushes. I have loaded my 3/4 inch oval wash with thinned spa blue, just using a slip slap, which means I'm using not the chisel edge but the flat edge of the brush, the back and the front, just to kind of do an X crossover. It will lay down a really nice background, shows a little bit of movement. The first coat is not going to be super even and smooth, but that gives the look of motion in the background. Always takes 2 coats. The first coat just will be a little bit light and dark, but not super spotty. You can see when I lay on the second coat how much more opaque it becomes. It still has a little bit of shifting in the back. Loading that same brush with thinned Prussian blue, very, very thin. I'm working quickly. I don't want any of the edges to dry out. If you do live in an area where it's super dry, just lightly mist the surface to keep that paint movable. I'm going to put on 1 layer, and you can see I'm softly blending it toward the middle, but the middle is definitely much brighter. A little bit of paint makes a big difference. Let it dry really, really well. Loading my brush again with the thinned Prussian blue, and I'm just going to repeat that same process, making it darker, starting at the outer edge, blending it softly toward the middle. Starting at the outer edge, the bulk of the paint will be used and becomes much lighter toward the middle. Just want to make sure I don't have any harsh stop and start lines. This is a very soft application of paint, and it's just the layers that build that create that moodiness, that darkness that you're trying to achieve with this. Very light strokes, almost a whisper, not heavy dark strokes. Just keep that paint very movable. If you need to use a glazing medium or a mister to keep that paint open time just a little bit longer, whatever works in your area, use that. And I just want to make sure I don't have any harsh edges. And you can see how it builds that movement in the background. It's just a really nice effect. And I use it often. Loaded the toe of my 3/4 inch angle with Payne's Gray. This is a very, very dark color, so I have thinned it down quite a bit, more water than paint. Just using it to scoot around the outer edge. It's going to darken that and create more of that evening effect. And while I have the paint on my brush, I'm just going to start adding basically it's the shadow area in the snow. Picked up a little bit of Prussian blue. It's not such a harsh deep gray blue. It's a little more of a blue, and by using the 2 colors you get a variation of the shadows. I'm trying to keep my strokes more horizontal. The angle of the strokes determines the lay of the land, so I'm just basically staying on the chisel edge of my brush. I have it laying down just a little bit to create that shadowing. Loaded the chisel edge of my number 8 filbert with black green, just pulling down a vertical line. That's the center of the tree trunk. Starting on the very edge of my filbert, and I'm tapping down, just touching. I've got my brush just about at a comfortable 45-degree angle, staying on the chisel edge, just letting it lean comfortably at the angle of my hand, starting in the middle and working toward the tips of the branches. That will create more of a fullness in the center area of the tree, and the tip of the branch become thinner, lighten up on the pressure of the brush, and it makes more of a wispy edge. Reloading often And the heaviness of the touch will determine how thick the paint is going to lie on those branches. So if I want it thicker, I can press down harder. Right now I'm just trying to get the basic shape of the tree, smaller at the top, wider toward the bottom, working out. And I want my branches to lay down in the snow. This tree hasn't been trimmed. It's an outside tree, and I want those branches to be buried in that snow at the bottom. So I'm adding some extra snow right down into those shadow snow that I just put on there. Just going back to kind of balance it out a little here and there. I don't want it to be perfect. I just want it to be pretty much just same shape up and down. Going back with plantation pine, just repeating that same thing just gives a little more greenness to the tree. I have loaded this is a number 12 filbert, loaded it with spa blue, keeping a much, much lighter touch, slowing down, and I'm laying snow on the tops of the branches. And I can just kind of create the branches the way I want them to be. Like some of them go down the middle, some go out to the sides, kind of slow down when I do that. And this is a lighter blue. It basically will be the shadow area of the snow. I want to make sure I still maintain visibility on that black green so that it creates that layered look. The snow's not going to cover it up solidly. Don't let it be too heavy. Always so much easier to add more than it is to go back and try to pull some of that out. And just very lightly touching that, creating that look of layers. Just such a great way to add that on. Let that dry really, really well. Now I'm going back with Snow White. And Snow White is you can see how much brighter it is than the Spa Blue. The Spa Blue looked bright until I put that Snow White on. However, when Snow White dries, it becomes very diminished in its brilliancy. So I will do that in layers as well. And also what that will do, it creates that automatic layering, creates that look of different levels, and the snow doesn't need to be shaded because of the layering. It just creates it naturally. And I can go in and kind of look at where I want the snow to be brighter. Some of that Spa Blue is just in the shadows and it's not going to have any brighter snow on top of it. The snow comes from the top and blows from the left. So my snow is going to be brighter and whiter on the top and the left of the branches. However, I pull some of that brightness onto both sides of the tree, not just keeping that on the left. And now I'm going to go back again with Snow White just to really enhance those heavier snow piles. And you can see what a difference this makes. A little bit of paint makes a big difference. That's my motto. Don't overdo. Just little touches of paint is amazing what it can create. And I did speed these up because it just takes time. It's not difficult at all. For the smaller tag, this is about a 12-inch tag. For the smaller tag, I just bumped down to a number 6 or 8 filbert. So you can make these trees any size. The size is determined by the size of the filbert. Such a great technique to really crank these out quickly, and I just think it's absolutely stunning. It's just beautiful. Look how that tree has become fluffy and full of snow. It's just great. I have loaded my diverse dry brush with Snow White. Wipe it on a paper towel to remove the excess. This is a number 4. And I'm just kind of dry brushing. These are the halos around the Christmas tree lights. If I try to put colors on that blue background, they're just going to, if I put yellow on, it's just going to turn kind of an icky green. Same thing on the tree. By adding these halos, it's going to make it much easier for those tree lights to really resonate with a stronger, more vibrant color. And so it just takes a little bit of paint, wipe it off on a paper towel. My diverse dry brushes are truly amazing. There's 7 different sizes, And it just makes this so super easy to create that soft halo. I did put one around the tree topper, but it was off camera, so you'll see that a little bit later. When I did the tree topper, because it's bigger, I did bump up to a bigger dry brush. And I can always go back and add more. I just kind of trying to figure out where I want to add these lights and just kind of dry brush those in. I am loading my Radical Round with Snow White, and I'm just going in and putting a spot of paint right in the center of those halos. If it's a little too strong, I'll just take my finger and kind of smudge it. What this is doing is going to enhance that center area of the light, and that way when I put the transparent color over it for the lights to glow, they're going to be, again, much stronger and resonate much brighter. I don't want a round spot, so I'm just using my finger to kind of smudge it. Loaded my Epic script liner with Snow White. Just going to pull out from the center I sparkle the rays from the top tree topper, and I'm just pulling it out and making that just a nice strong stroke. I do have that white halo behind it, and this just really begins to pronounce that star at the top and make it very, very distinct. Loading my diverse dry brush with Snow White, wipe the tips off, and now I'm just dry brushing over the tines. It's going to soften that harsh line and allow those tines to be just a softer glow. I'm using Baby Duck and my Radical Round, and I've thinned it down, putting that yellow in there, and I'm just kind of smudging it with my finger. I went to True Red for the next, for the red lights, and when I kind of smudged it, I wasn't real crazy about the way it looked. Red's kind of has a different personality than a lot of colors. It's very saturated. So I went with my diverse dry brush, and I decided I would just dry brush it on, and that worked perfectly. It just gave that soft hint of color, and I didn't have that harsh line. Going back and putting a stronger red in the center, that's where the bulb's going to be the brightest. I was going to do the yellow, but I added a little bit of red in there. I think that made it a more true, like a glowing light with just that hint of orange. This is Green Tree, and I'm doing the same thing, just kind of smudging it in and creating that soft halo color, and then I'll go back and add a stronger bit of the green tree right in the center of those lines. And this is where you can go back and add more if you've missed any, or you think it's a little off balance. It's really easy to go back and drop in a few more. And I always think it's better to go back and add more than to have so many that it's just kind of overwhelming. And I added a yellow in that dark area. I had to go back and put some white in there to allow it to really shine. Taking that Baby Duck and thinning it down, just kind of washing over those light rays, pulling it out, just to give that star at the top just a little more color. And I'm just staying on the toe of my brush. If you're not familiar with my Radical Rounds, they just have a fat belly and a sharp point. They're great to work with. I loaded my Epic script liner with thinned Snow White, just painting a starburst on each one of these Christmas lights. It just creates that strong sparkle. It just really adds so much to help those lights kind of nestle in. It helps them to glow. Adds that little bit of elegant sparkle. Just really a great way to brighten the lights and to really make them shine strong. I did speed this up because it takes a little bit of time to do all of those. But what a difference. Make sure that the brush is loaded correctly If you are not able to apply an entire starburst before you have to reload, there's not enough moisture on the brush. You should be able to do one, if not a couple starbursts before reloading. And I'm going back with a little bit of Payne's Gray to deepen that outer edge. I kind of thought in the beginning I would need to, but I always like to wait. I can always add it later instead of trying to lighten it up. And I went down with my 1/2 inch angle just for a little more control. I wanted it to look kind of moody and give it that evening, nighttime atmosphere. Same brush, my 1/2 inch awesome angle. If you're not familiar with my angles, they're a little bit longer than a traditional angle. Using Spa Blue, and this is the first color that I used when I added the snow on the tree. Loaded the toe of the brush, but I'm using the chisel edge to lay the paint on. I have a lot of moisture in my brush. I'm able to move it around. The bulk of the color is going to be on the top. The flat of the brush is going to soften it and blend it out. And now I'm going in with Snow White to really brighten it up. I don't want blue snow, I want white snow, but I also want it to have layers of color and depth and really look like it's kind of wind blown. When I go around the tree, I want to tuck it in and still allow some of that dark shadowing to glow through or be visible. And sometimes with pine trees, those branches sink right down into the snow, so I let it kind of pull up and pile up around the base of the tree. And you can see how it's starting to brighten up. I probably have more moisture on my brush than I do paint, but the paint that allows the paint to be very movable. I don't want it to look like a rough sea, so by going over it with many layers, light layers of paint, I can control the softness, I can control the shadowing, and I can also control how bright the snow will become. Just let each layer completely dry before the next layer is added. That will retain the brightness and the shadows. And now I'm just going back with a little more Snow White just to highlight here and there. And you can see if you kind of squint at it where the brightness is. I wanted there to be a shadow cast by the tree in the snow, so I have just a hint of Payne's Gray, just kind of scooting my brush, not solidly, but in front, kind of to the right of the tree to create that look of shadowing. And that just helps give a little more interest in that foreground snow so it doesn't just look all the same. Tuck a little bit of shadowing under those bottom branches. I did let that dry. Now I'm going back with Snow White, and I'm not going to cover up all that shadowing, but I want to break it up so that it looks like that the snow is kind of piled up in little drifts, not great big drifts. This is just a mild wind. And I keep my blow dryer in my left hand, so I paint a little bit, and then my dryer is handy right there so I can paint, and I don't have to stop and get my dryer. And this is a heated tool. It's super quiet, super efficient, and I can really hone in on the areas I want to dry, and it dries so quickly. It's really nice to work with, nice comfortable size. Just going back in to brighten up some of that snow where it should be drifting around the base of the tree. It's these little touches that make a difference. I'm not going to put them everywhere, just where I want to add a little more brightness. Let it dry well, and I thought it would be fun to add a little bit of glow from the tree lights on the snow on the ground. So I'm taking the green tree and I really thin it down. This is Baby Duck, just thin it down. and just put a very light wash of color onto the snow. And this isn't solid because there's shadowing. I'm just pulling it across here and there. And just a hint of that red. Be careful, that red is super strong and it does not take much. But look how that makes that ground glow. I did add a little red in the tree topper halo, and now I'm going back with Snow White and my Epic script liner just to really brighten up that topper. The only thing left to do is add a little bit of snowfall. I'm using my splatter brush. It's my favorite snow splattering tool. I never get fingers dirty, and I really have super good control over where it goes. Well, this wraps up painting the beautiful Christmas tree. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you. If you're enjoying the video, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. That way you won't miss out on future videos. Thank you again for joining me, and I look forward to our next painting adventure together. And remember, a little bit of paint makes a big difference.